I'm feeling some things. I didn't expect that. I had come into this with the understanding, at least in my mind, that this question was a foregone conclusion. But perhaps I feel differently. I think that in answering the question, I think it's also important to acknowledge that perhaps we're even coming into the question with different ideas of a future in mind. So, is this a process that one would want to recommend? Well, that depends on what political destiny you see for South Africa. And I don't presume that we would agree on that. The renowned scholar Achille Mbembe, not too far from here last week, asked the question emerging from Frantz Fanon's writings, what time is it? And I think that it seems fairly clear that young South Africans, particularly young black South Africans, are asking that question with speed. I think that there's a sort of a dangerous assumption that we need to be educated in a particular kind of way to know what our future holds. I think it strips people of their agency to some degree for many who have in mind political projects, who have in mind things that they require for their dignity to be restored, land of which being only one. I think the question about the relevance of the TRC is going to be increasingly an academic question as we look at South Africa's teleology. As we continue to separate, as time moves forward economically and racially, the nuances of the TRC process, I think, will be the stuff of history books that perhaps will be burned along with the South African dream itself. But on the question about, people often say, you have to separate the outcome from the process. Okay, we can talk about the process quickly, and I think that to some degree, the issue of the process of the TRC will have a bearing whether one likes it or not, on what our options are when the time comes. And I think it's important to acknowledge here that one of the primary failings, I think that many would agree on the failing of the TRC, is how it individualized experiences of oppression. And what kind of difficulty that this has presented in present-day liberal South Africa for people who are trying to navigate oppressions that one, even in the most optimistic sense, could never have expected to disappear. So people are trying to deal with collective memory and intergenerational trauma in an individualized sense. People are being asked to explain who exactly is being racist to you. Can you please point me to their faces and their names, and I'll deal with it appropriately. I think that's something I've heard far too many times. We have a generation of young people who are being called born frees. Who thought of such a dangerous name? What a ridiculous thing to say. Even for people who knew, in the most optimistic sense, what South Africa needed to do to get to where it needs to be. How dare you call these young people born free? That's the TRC. TRC was forgiveness that was a foregone conclusion. TRC was peace that was required only for whites. In emphasizing a process that would work with the legal frameworks of what took place during apartheid, while at the same time not acknowledging that this could not be, even in looking at the rule of law, one could not really consider it as legitimate because all were not equal in front of the law. That the apartheid project itself, the law itself, was a political construct with a clear political ideology. There was a separation between those who were citizens, those who were subjects, as Mahmoud Mamdani very aptly articulates, and those who were banished into Bantustans and regarded as natives. Not in the affirmative sense, in the most derogatory sense, in the most dehistoricized sense, relegated to a state of barbarism.